Hello, welcome back to the Marketing Chat Room. I am Kayla and I am here today with Jackson Reiter. He is co-founder and COO of Realm, and I will let him give a quick intro on himself.
Yeah, thank you, Kayla. This is fun to be here and actually get on your podcast, which I've watched since episode 1.
Thank you.
There's a
True
huge chat
supporter.
to go through, but I have been following. Like you said, I'm Jackson. Most of my background has been in marketing and advertising, which is, I guess, why I'm on here now. And recently have launched Realm, as you mentioned, which is an AI real estate agent, essentially. For that, like you said, though I am COO and basically the catch net for everything anyone else doesn't want to do, on being in marketing, I also handle all of that for us as well. Everything from paid social, paid search, PPC, organic, you name it. So yeah, happy to be here. I think a lot about everything going on in marketing frequently, and I don't get nearly enough time to dive into it anymore, given that I have other things I have to worry about. So it's fun to come here and hopefully opine about what's going on in the industry, give some of my unhinged theories about what works and what doesn't, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, totally. I'm excited to have you and to have this convo. Jackson and I met in New York. I'm in Sacramento. He's in New York, actually, but I was traveling for a trade show a couple of years ago. So it's great we've stayed connected via LinkedIn, and it's great to be talking again.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's a good thing to call it. You're West Coast, I'm East Coast. If you could not tell by our skin tones, I am very much in East Coast, New York, winter, pale, and very jealous of the fact that you have sun where you are.
We have some, not today. We have some sun. I have really good lighting in this room, luckily. But yeah, going to be a good conversation. And I'm specifically excited to talk about marketing in the real estate realm with you because I have a lot of real estate agents in my life, and I am, maybe you can change my mind, I'm of the belief that real estate is one of the most difficult things to market for, especially when you're talking like direct to consumer.
Yeah.
So excited to hear what kind of like tricks you've got up your sleeve and what you've been working on.
Hopefully I can find some tricks up my sleeves as well. About 2 months into our full launch. And it's going well. It's going very well. Better than I expected, actually. But, there's always more we could be doing.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, if you don't mind giving us just a quick intro, I know you said it's an AI real estate platform, but tell us a little bit more about what Realm is and how it works.
Sure. So like I said, Realm is an AI real estate search engine, essentially. There's a lot of other pieces to it, but the nuts and bolts is that it's a totally natural language real estate search. We're specifically live for New York City apartment rentals. And what a user can do when they enter the platform is simply describe what they want. And our AI institution, we call it, our kind of agent network, digs through everything and finds what you want based off of the things that actually matter. Our whole thesis being that where you live is the setting of your life story, essentially, right? And where that story plays out, what the setting is, really matters. And dogs get involved, which I love. Excited about real estate.
She's passionate, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so we're doing that. It's going very well. There's a lot of things that we can do with that as the kind of like user interface of allowing people to find, again, the homes that matter to them based off of what they actually want and what their lifestyle actually dictates. There's a lot of other things we could go into there, but that's the foundation of it. Describe what you want and have it served to you on the platform.
I love that. As a consumer, that sounds ideal and probably, hopefully, the direction things end up going in the future for all real estate nationwide. I would love to, we're considering a move in the new year, and I would love to be able to be like walk-in closet, garage, backyard. Like, are those the types of terms I can put in there and find what I'm looking for? Not in New York City,
Yep.
but
we're just testing in New York City. I mean, New York City is such a vector for what goes on in a lot of industries. It's a very like confined kind of petri dish of, maybe that's not the right word, kind of a nice vector for whatever else is going on elsewhere. So we're just starting.
yeah.
We'll get out to California pretty soon. But yeah, you can search by not just kind of features, we want a walk-in closet and all of that, but you can search visually too. Our AI actually scans through the imagery. So you could search in New York. Something we see a lot is location based. Like I want to be within a 15-minute walk of work. I want exposed brick walls. I want a red door. I want a blue microwave. The sky's the limit.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's very much home search without limits.
That's really cool. Okay. Hello. Yeah, we have a specific thing in my whole household about cabinet colors. We do not like dark cabinets. So, but we also don't like. We have a really specific cabinet taste, so that would work well for us. We don't like them too dark or too light, unless
Should
they're white.
your social media bios specific about my cabinet colors.
Yes, yes. It's a very specific range. Cool. Well, I'm going to throw you, before we get into our full convo, I'm going to throw you my favorite 2 questions to ask all of my guests.
Please.
And the first one is, what is one of your all-time favorite marketing campaigns or ads?
My brain immediately goes to billboards just because I have like I don't know, I've probably watched Mad Men too many times. So I have like this weak criticism for like old school advertising. And that's like a modern day version of that. And the one that my brain goes to was a Tullamore Dew, the whiskey company. They did it out of home in New York. I'm sure a lot of people watching are already picturing what I am talking about. They did this billboard campaign. I can't remember the year, but it just had a kind of, what I can say is a rather average Irish looking guy sitting on a bar stool drinking Tullamore Dew. And the tagline was just simply celebrity free since 1892. And it kind of just hit home. Kind of the things that, beyond just being funny and attention grabbing, because there's this very almost startlingly normal looking person on the billboard.
Yeah.
But really, like, talk about understanding your audience. I mean, living in New York for about 10 years now, every Irish bar you go to, which there are a lot in, the East Village, the Upper East Side, places where I've lived, pretty much every bartender's favorite or go-to whiskey, I should say, maybe not favorite. It's always Tullamore. It's like a locals only drink. And so kind of understanding that as a brand and then leaning into the fact that, no, we're not this, up and up, social media influencer type liquor company. We're very much, kind of that Irish sentiment of the everyman kind of company. And that's a super opiny way and kind of a platitude to say that it's just a funny campaign, and it did really well.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. And I, maybe it's because I'm from California. I don't know that brand at all. So that's cool. And I wonder if it's more specific to where you live, but it sounds like you're right. They really hit their target audience with the messaging that, resonates with them. Especially these days, like there is so much going on in like the influencer marketing space, and everyone thinks they want a celebrity, right? Like I feel like that's everyone's like ideal situation. Like if we could get X person to promote our brand, then it would be fantastic. But I mean, I think there's a lot of value in doing like micro influencer type of stuff. And then even so, like it's kind of funny that now you can move away from that and be like, look, we're different. Like, we don't need a celebrity. We're just average people marketing to average people.
Yeah. I think it was, particularly with out of home, placement is, again, not saying anything new here, important where things show up digitally and in the real world. And I think the reason that one really took off immediately when they launched it was kind of the juxtaposition of what you're talking about. The biggest, because they did it all over New York. I think there was like maybe a couple dozen big marquee billboards that they did for this campaign. But the one that everybody posted on social media was around the corner, if I'm remembering correctly, from the like Soho area famous Calvin Klein billboard.
Okay.
Like, I'm pretty sure Calvin Klein owns this location because it's in the 10 years I've lived here, it's always been the new Calvin Klein billboard in Soho.
Okay.
And this Tullamore one was like maybe a few blocks away from that. So I think seeing, whoever the celebrity they had up there was, and then walking around the corner and seeing, some big Irish guy on a bar stool, it was just so, it's very much a pattern interrupt, especially in like Soho and the kind of trendy downtown area.
Right. Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. That's cool. That's a good favorite ad. I love when my guests come to me with an ad that I've never like heard of or seen, because then I get to learn about it and be like, oh, that is a really cool strategy. And it's funny how different things can be just from place to place. Like I mean, I know what you're talking about, but don't know that brand, don't know exactly where that billboard is. So pretty cool to hear
Yeah.
that story. And I wonder how successful it was for them. I'm guessing it
How big
must
is,
have worked pretty well.
can I kind of ask you about that? How big
Yeah.
is like out of home, like traditional out of home, not even digital, not on bus stops or anything? You're in Sacramento or West Coast somewhere, right? How much,
Sacramento, yeah.
yeah, how much is that relevant in that market? Because I've been to California maybe a handful of times in my life, ever.
Yeah.
Is it a big thing there? Are there billboards that people even care about?
That's a good question. I think it's so much different here. Um, Mostly you'll see billboards along the highways when you're like
Makes
on a
sense.
road trip is when you'll notice them the most. Around here in Sacramento, like the ones that stick out in my mind are for like the casinos that we have out in little places off of the highway here. Or like wine brands or restaurants, that kind of thing. There's a lot of in California. But it's like a totally different experience than going to like, I mean, Times Square obviously is a pretty stereotypical example. But you guys have so much and it's such a different, like you have all the different shopping areas and different neighborhoods and they're kind of all over. Whereas here it's more of like I'm on a road trip and I'm thinking about like either planning my next vacation or where I'm going to stop to eat while I'm on this road trip. Like it's it's a much different, like I don't think we have, correct me if I'm wrong, someone from California. I don't remember ever seeing like a Calvin Klein billboard. I'm sure there's one somewhere, but yeah, I think it's just very different as far as like the mindset that we're in when we're driving around.
Yeah. I mean, maybe with self-driving or something that'll become more relevant. Because I know in California, everything's 3 hours away. I mean, if you have to get anywhere, it's a 3 hour drive at minimum. So maybe that'll start to be more relevant. It's interesting to think about. Yeah,
It
and you're
is.
walking, so there's not, you got plenty of dead time to just like look up at things. And
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense too, because ours, like, you have to catch the attention quickly because we're speeding by in a car. We're probably distracted if we're a passenger, if we're a driver. Hopefully, we have our eyes on the road. I was on a road trip, I don't know, after Thanksgiving a couple weeks ago, and we saw it was annoying, but it worked because I still remember it. We saw like a series of probably at least 50 billboards for this same casino along this stretch of road. I mean, it was probably like 100 miles when it was all said and done. But yeah, they kept saying like different things about like the food, the experience, the hotel, the spa. Like they had a billboard about every single thing that was in that casino for just miles and miles. And like we were making fun of it, but it's top of mind for me. Like I'm still thinking about that ad that I saw.
interesting. It's kind of like they were doing like a physical world retargeting, with
Yeah,
different value props. It's like, okay, we know
right.
people drive from here to here. Let's hit them with every different value prop along the way. And maybe at a certain on-ramp onto the highway, maybe people from that town are more interested in our spas or whatever. I don't know. I'm making it up, but I'm sure that there's some sort of marketing team. There's definitely some analyst somewhere who's digging into that.
Hmm. Yeah, metrics for out of home, I mean, they're almost non-existent, but I'm like, are those made up when they're like, this, you'll get this many people like looking at your ad? But I mean, you can never really know, but it's interesting to kind of think about what effect that might have. Um, we're talking to a wine brand right now that's thinking about doing some digital out of home in like really targeted areas like ski resort type cities and beach cities during the summer. So that'll be interesting to work with them. I feel like there's a lot of wine in this area. Wine billboards are big around here, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and how that supports their sales strategy.
Definitely. Something else, just talking about maybe a last note on out of home, but a funny story that might be kind of relevant. I'm going to anonymize everyone involved, protect the
Okay.
everything. But I had a very good friend who was working for an agency who got contracted for a very, very hyper-specific scope. It was a brand that was a consumer brand in, let's say, technology, roughly, that also had an enterprise piece that they were trying to pivot into on the like kind of commercial side and pitch this B2B part to bigger companies.
Okay.
Anyway, what they wound up doing is they came to my friend's agency specifically to contract them to do a marketing campaign for out of home directly on the CEO of the company they were trying to pitch's drive to work. Like he was
Okay.
the 7 touch points every day of this brand that they were trying to work with. And they tried to do that as kind of like social warming before they
Yeah.
actually pitched him directly. Very kind of, I don't know. I'm sure some people see that as like very smart, and some people think that that's a little bit manipulative. But I mean, I don't remember if it was successful or not. I wish I had a closure to that story for you, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, you'll have to find out and let me know. That's so interesting. I think that's super smart. I love stuff like that, like stories where people get creative and come up with ways to reach. I mean, that's their target audience. That's their target audience. And like, what better way to reach them than find out what they do every day and be there?
Yeah. That might have been the most expensive CAC of that company's. One user.
I hope so. I hope they got that. I hope they got that client. That's super funny. I like that a lot. I'm gonna have to figure out how we can weave that in. The closest we do to that type of strategy is like LinkedIn targeting, like account-based marketing type stuff, where we pull not for ourselves, but for our clients, like who their target campaign, like who their target audience is, and then run a campaign specifically to those people. Like we had a packaging company that was trying to acquire like a really, really big brand that makes like household products, cleaning products, like stuff we all have in our homes. And so we crafted messaging and creative that would like specifically speak to that company's values. And then we've targeted them with those ads. So it's always fun to come up with like a creative way of reaching who you're trying to talk to. And like you said, warming them up a little bit, like even if it's a little bit of some subliminal messaging and you don't know you're being marketed to, but you're like, oh yeah, when it comes, you're like, I have heard of that brand.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I think I saw a billboard for that or whatever it was, or maybe I saw a LinkedIn post or this person messaged me. It's
Exactly.
real quick. Speaking of placement, I completely forgot to put on my branded Realm baseball
Yeah.
for this call. So I'm just going to give some error and continuity to your viewers who are
Please.
skimming through the video to go, why is he wearing a hat now?
Yeah.
But it'll be good. It's good for watch time. Yeah, that's actually something that I was super interested in before starting Realm was like B2B marketing, because I was talking to the CEO of a, I'll say a med spa company in New York, very amazing one actually, that kind of started on like a venture scale model. But anyway, they started B2B, and her and I had this great conversation about kind of the truism. Again, I'm not saying anything new here. I'm sure everybody's thought this in marketing in your audience. But the fact that B2B is too often taken as like a separate thing from consumer.
Mhm.
And though it is a different strategy, like you said, you're going to leverage more LinkedIn, a little bit more social warming, and some more of that like engagement campaign, as opposed to like direct response and everything. A lot more leads, a lot more sales involved. But you're still at the end of the day selling to people. I mean, you have to get, whether it's the stakeholder or the decision maker, or even if it's a software for startup companies, you have to get to that person and understanding what that funnel looks like. It's the same thing as getting a consumer. It's just a slightly different mechanism, though the
Mhm.
and again, the messaging will be slightly different as well. They're not as much as I think most people tend to try to change it into.
Yeah.
You still have to catch the attention. The same behavioral psychology that holds true in all, old school consumer advertising holds true when you're selling B2B too. You got to spark interest, and you have to give an interface between product and person,
Yes. Yes. Thank you for saying that. That I agree wholeheartedly. And that's like, I feel like that's kind of my mission for 2025. Like, let's bring some like character and personality and emotion and a little bit of like warmth to B2B marketing, because it can be so stale and it's just like painful. I feel like a lot of brands are getting there, like starting to get it. Like you're still marketing to people. The people might be in a different mindset. Like if I'm scrolling LinkedIn versus scrolling Instagram, I'm in a different mindset, but I'm still the same person, right? Like I'm still going to laugh when I see something funny. And I think that's so important and something that a lot of more traditional business to business brands are not quite like I want them to get there so badly. They're not quite there yet.
Yeah. And it's amazing. Actually, before starting Realm, I was talking with a couple of my other marketing friends about starting a specifically B2B agency
Yeah.
literally just on this. Didn't wind up doing that, obviously. Realm is the significantly higher leveraged idea for like the world, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Much bigger impact on how we all experience life. So I went with that, obviously. It's the most important.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's something that I'm very interested in. Maybe in a second life, I'll get back into that part of everything, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I'll pick it up and run with it for you on your behalf. I'll be working on that through my current agency. I think that's going to be a big focus of 2025 for our clients.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be fun.
Do you work with mostly B2B or is it also consumer as well?
We're a pretty good mix. I'd say maybe 50-50 right now as far as ad spend goes. Looking into January, February of 2025, I think we're going to grow the B2B side quite a bit, which will be interesting and exciting to me. But yeah, we work with a pretty broad range of clients as far as like who they are, where they are, what their industry is. But strategy, we're pretty specialized in paid media placements.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah.
It was something that I had to figure out briefly. The last agency I was at, I was almost, actually, no, I had exclusively ever done consumer at that agency.
Okay.
Actually, ever. Even the brands that I had been in-house for before that were all consumer brands. And as your dog barked before, I have the East Coast equivalent, and I hear trucks beeping outside my window. Yeah, but right before I left, we had onboarded a B2B client, and that's kind of where this all came from because I just had no idea. I thought I had to change everything and, totally different strategy. I only worked with them for maybe a few months before I wound up going in-house at another consumer brand, but that was definitely where that learning of it's all still just people at the end of the funnel kind of came from. Yeah, looking forward to maybe in the future, again, a second lifetime, getting back into really honing in on that and kind of teaching also some of these B2B brands. And I'm sure that you've seen your share of clients on the B2B side you've worked with, as we all have, with that are maybe even like huge, 8-9 figure revenue B2B companies, and their just general design and facade of the business, branding at its core, is just horrible, just cringy, disgusting garbage. Not to use strong language or anything, but it's just terrible. And it really teaching, I would love to get involved with some of those companies in maybe a third or fourth lifetime and just really expose to them that it's not just because you want to have your website look pretty. There actually is a marketing, consumer, or rather client engagement leverage that you get from that, where especially at an early stage, if you heavily invest in it early and you're going against like maybe an entrenched industry, the difference in your client perception at an early stage can really totally outpace what it would be if you're just kind of doing the same thing as everybody else. Over-investing in design, over-investing in, again, just kind of that messaging, visual branding side of things can really add a lot, especially early on B2B.
Absolutely. Yeah. It doesn't have to be so boring and so like textbook, I guess. The thing that I hate the most is when I'm either like talking to a prospect or I'm just prospecting on my own. I come across like it typically happens to me with software as a service companies. And I go to their website and I'm like, I have no idea what you guys do or what this product is or how it would help me or anyone else on this planet or who your target audience is. Like it's just like words, so many words. And like, very generic looking stock images, and I'm like, I can't figure it out. And if I can't figure it out, like, who are you marketing to?
It's all just WordPress sites and Unsplash images. It's
Yeah,
all it is.
it's a nightmare, like a fever dream.
Seriously, cookie cutter.
Yeah, it's the worst. Cool. Well, we should move on to my second question because we're having such a good convo about the first one.
Yeah,
But if you could join the marketing team for any brand in the world, what would it be?
I kind of have two, and one's more interesting than the other. So I'll start with the
Okay.
less interesting one. I would love to work on the actual, not campaign side of things, but the actual like marketing digital side of things for a political campaign. Uh,
Okay.
affiliation, totally irrelevant to why I think this is interesting. I just think there's like a couple of people that have ever done it well for politics, whether it's local, state, federal, doesn't matter. But still, now in almost 2025, um, they're all just so 2004 kind of looking. It's very not useful. Every time I see a congressperson running in my hometown in New Jersey, it's always
Mm-hmm.
the most generic, you know, 240 pixel resolution Instagram pictures that I've ever seen in my life. There's just such
Yeah.
an outrage that you could do there. And still, it's totally an unarbitraged spot to like get involved in that. And also thinking about like reframing the brain of not going for conversions, but trying to backlog interest to have one conversion event, an election. That's just a really interesting kind of challenge to think about. But I think the more, maybe that one actually wound up being kind of interesting. The more like
Yeah.
usual one that I would say is probably Uber. First of all, I think that with their expansion with Uber Eats, they just recently, I think they might have changed agencies, but they just launched a big new campaign for that is super interesting, and I love it a lot. I also think on the traditional or regular like Uber rides side of things,
Mm-hmm.
have opportunity to kind of um, rediscover the original brand, where at least here in New York, I don't know if this is different elsewhere in the country, if the perception changes. But in New York, a lot of people I've seen have started going back to taxis because Ubers
Mm.
have somehow weirdly, in kind of a subconscious, unspoken way, been now a little bit relegated to kind of the lower market, almost like, oh, I'll take an Uber. Whereas a taxi feels more
Interesting.
like a luxury commodity, even though it's actually cheaper a lot of times than an Uber. Um,
Okay.
and so I think there's a really interesting opportunity to like realign consumer perception of the actual Uber rides, particularly in like East Coast cities. Um, personally,
Yeah.
I almost exclusively take taxis now.
Really?
It feels more, it almost feels more luxury to get in
Huh.
than it does to call an Uber. And so kind of revamping that interesting problem to solve.
Okay. Yeah, that's super interesting and not the case out here at all. I feel like Uber to us has become like the word Kleenex, right? Like it is what we do when we're calling a ride. It doesn't matter what app you're using or how you're getting a ride. I'm calling an Uber. Like that's just that's what we're doing. So that's super interesting that is kind of shifting out there, and taxis don't really exist. I mean, taxis don't exist for my generation in California. I don't know anyone who's ever taken a taxi here if they were not in New York City.
I think part of that, this might be an interesting kind of pivot into another topic or not. I think the reason that like where my brain goes thinking about the Uber taxi New York City problem, specifically to this market, like you're saying, it's very different in California where it's become synonymous with the industry itself. In New York, I feel like like post COVID's particularly,
Hmm.
I feel like a lot of people that are living in New York, particularly young people, you know, our demographic, part of the allure of the taxi is like that nostalgic New York City vibe or lifestyle,
Uh-huh.
whatever it is. It's almost like nostalgia to be able to take a taxi,
Okay.
even if it's a nostalgia you never experienced when you were younger. I grew up,
Yeah.
I still think of it kind of like what I imagined New York City being like. And I think with Uber, there'd be an opportunity to kind of, it's existed long enough that you could maybe play back on the nostalgia of early Uber and kind of reframe that as the New York City lifestyle. Like we've gotten so far ahead that the nostalgia bar moved from like taxis to early Uber. So I think we can go back to that
Yeah.
and revamp a little bit of hype around that.
That's a great idea.
Look
We'll
at me
have to
saying
tag Uber.
as if I'm like on the Uber team already. I'm like, sweet. Oh,
I
we're-
I
there's
do the same thing. My boyfriend makes fun of me because I do that every time. I'm like, "Thank you for joining us today." He's like, "Who's us?" It's just you hosting this podcast. I don't know. Me and my fans, my audience, might or
yeah.
might not exist.
No, it makes it sound like you have like a big team, production team behind the camera here, which you might. I don't know. I haven't seen behind your camera. You could have like a whole
Yeah,
audio visual team going on.
there's like 20 people right here. No, it's just my dog. Well, yeah, that's a super interesting one, and interesting talking with you today about just like cultural differences between New York and California, because you don't really think like you'd think, okay, U.S. like it's all U.S. like we're all kind of similar, not the same, but
Yeah,
we're living two very different experiences from coast to coast.
it seems like it. That might be something that's worth looking into for anyone watching that's doing paid media in any form, social, search, organic, whatever it is. I feel like that because in a historical context, online advertising, digital marketing, if I want to sound like a total old person, uh, it's in historical context, it's still relatively new. And I feel like a lot of us came in just during that. So we don't think about the traditional kind of like segmentation that we used to. We just assume like, particularly with, e-commerce or anything like that, or SaaS even, it's just you have maybe you're limited to the US, maybe you're not. If not, then our world. But you just have like the US market. You go on Meta Ads Manager and you hit broad audience, the entire US, and you just go. But I think there definitely is still an opportunity to segment out by location. We've seen that at Realm. We have confined geographies, and we're even experimenting within the city, having different messaging for different boroughs or lifestyles or interests or keywords based off of location. And even for like Uber has a tangible connection to the physical world, right? With ride sharing. But even in physical products, we're obviously uncovering some cultural differences within even the US here that you could totally arbitrage in messaging, visuals, even just overall campaign structure. What platforms do you use across Austin to LA to New Jersey or whatever?
Right.
There's a lot to think about there.
Yeah, totally. I think that's super smart. Like incorporating people's lived experiences in their daily lives into the creative strategy. I think creative strategy is something in the agency world that can often be missed. I know that's something that we're working on being more intentional about as an agency, because we get really excited, like, okay, let's place all these ads and target the right people and see what happens. Sometimes even if you're targeting the exact right audience, like the messaging or the creative might not align with them like exactly the way you want it to. Like, I feel like we're often doing the best we can because maybe the client has a small budget or they don't have a creative team or, something. There are a lot of restrictions that can contribute to marketing. Like, I would love to just have an unlimited marketing budget for a client and be able to be like, okay, we're segmenting all these audiences and every single one of them has a different creative and like A/B testing with messaging and copy and everything. Like, it would be so cool to be able to really truly test like everything possible and see what came out of it.
Seriously. I mean, this might be a short-term anti-ROAS thought or perspective, but kind of like in universities where you get grants to do certain research. Like imagine if like big clients had like marketing. I mean, they probably do have marketing research budgets, but like actually advertising research budgets. Like, hey, here's our experimentation budget specifically. I'm sure someone's doing this, and just like figure out the best possible setup, system, targeting, audience, creative combinations or through lines that you can extract and use in other campaigns. Again, that would be an investment in future advertising. Your quarterly ROAS is probably going to take a hit on that. But maybe you just,
Yeah.
segment that out and you don't blend it into the CAC. But yeah, I'm
Right.
sure that anyone listening who's at an agency, good luck pitching that to your director or account manager for any clients that you're working on.
I know, right? Like, let's just forget about all the metrics for a minute and have some fun. I mean, that would be a dream, but I totally understand that metrics are important, especially when you have a limited marketing budget. You can't just throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. But I would love to do that. It's my dream job.
That's all of our dream jobs. Working in marketing, we all just want to be creative and, have an idea and test it. But again, I'm at an early stage company. We have like 9 people in the entire company. I am the
Yeah.
marketing department.
Uh-huh.
Very specific, time sensitive KPIs that we want to hit.
Right.
Move fast on things. And so even personally, I don't have, it's not what I'm doing. I'm very much tied to user acquisition and revenue. That's
Mm-hmm.
the 2 things I got to focus on. I'll play
Yeah.
around a little bit in the future. Once we get to scale, I'll maybe carve something out to do some of that sort of research. I wouldn't
Right.
call it just creative expression. I'm going to bill it as research on the balance sheet, definitely.
I think you should. I think more research in the future, especially as things like shift toward AI. Like on the marketing side, I mean, I love AI. I use AI for almost everything all day long. But it is interesting to see how it's impacting like creative messaging, that kind of thing. Um, because I think it's making certain things worse. And I think that there's a lot of room for creativity and creative research in the coming years.
Definitely. I mean, again, this is not by any means a unique perspective to have, but when you see AI in marketing, immediately your brain, first most applicable application, search copy. Just have it write, like, here's a description of my company, write me a Google search ad campaign, an RSA. If you have a client that's doing that in-house without a marketing team, maybe it's a B2B client, it's going to come out in GPTEs,
Mhm.
we're starting to all have a intuition for where you read something and for a fact this came directly from the free version of GPT.
Right.
Like overly average vernacular. But like that's where having someone with marketing experience and an understanding of audience, products, messaging, the actual behavioral psychology of what you're selling, to use that tool as like a framework to help accelerate what you're already doing rather than just have it be the marketer.
Mhm.
Uh, Again, not a unique perspective to have that AI is a leverage tool, not a replacement tool,
Right.
but it's cliche for a reason.
Totally. Yeah. On that note, we've talked a little bit about old school and new school marketing, but I'd like to jump into kind of what you're seeing and what you're working on as we're in December now. I'm not sure when I'll publish this episode, but as we look to the beginning of the new year in 2025, what do you have on your plate as far as realm goes with marketing?
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be definitely a scaling effort for all of our existing efforts. I mean, we have a great, incredibly efficient baseline on search, and we're starting to see that too in social. Search definitely. I mean, real estate is a high intent thing for consumers, so search makes sense. You can actually have, intent based placement. But some of the things that we're experimenting with, 2025 is the year for us of scale through experimentation. In
Okay.
maybe perhaps this might actually have circled back to what you were talking about with old school marketing, but we're trying things like just straight up memes on the organic side. We're trying with flyers, like in New York City, a lot of foot traffic.
Yeah.
Old school printer paper, black and white, big bold text on a lamppost kind of advertising. We're trying some of that. Some anti-ads on the actual digital side.
Mm-hmm.
Just having a bit of fun with that. And specifically, it's kind of an opportunity to bring some of that new school message testing to kind of an old school perceived placement and test some of that out. We've kind of come through the fugue state fever dream of like early social advertising. We're out to like, it's now an entrenched industry. It's part of the mix, not just the strategy. You can't just have an e-com store, do Facebook ads and print cash. It's got to be a little more holistic. So like I said, to bring it back to Realm, we're scaling our baseline, and then we're going to have some we're going to take a lot of like moonshots with some more organic, old school type things. Is really where we're going with that.
Nice. That's awesome. I like it. Cool.
How do you feel about like more
looking at my notes here?
On the digital side? I'd love to ask you about that. Do you think there's an opportunity now to take, again, specifically on the digital side?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say take things less seriously, but I will say that. Like, do you think there's a bigger opportunity for what I would describe as anti-ads or even like actual meme advertising? Not even just on the organic side. I mean, actually on the paid placement side.
Yeah, I think there is. Personally, it can be difficult for brands to kind of get over that idea as far as like brand safety concerns go. But I do think, especially for like our generation and the younger generations, I think that that's what we're looking for in B2B and direct-to-consumer marketing. Like, I think we want a little bit of humor, a little bit of relevance to our daily lives, a little bit of like poking fun at ourselves or at like who the company is and what they do. Like, I think that resonates really well with a lot of audiences. It can, again, depending on who the target is there, like it can be a concern for brand safety, because I think the older generations are used to more traditional advertising and they might be a little bit thrown off by it. But I think we can start to mix in a little bit of that with like throughout the generations, and then target the younger generations with just more interesting content. I don't know. It's interesting because then I think we're going to see a lot of the younger, newer brands like swing that direction so far that we're going to have to go back to traditional. Like it's always going to be a little bit of a pendulum. But yeah, right now, the way the market is, I'm all for like sprinkling in a little bit of creativity, because things can be so generic. I'm thinking especially like we work with a few wineries and it works for some of their audiences, but all of the wineries right now are trying to target younger audiences because their current, the current people that buy their wine is like aging out, they're drinking less, whatever it may be for health concerns. And the younger generations are not drinking as much alcohol, or they're not specifically drinking wine. So it's been interesting to chat with them and try to bring in like fresh voices to the wine industry, because it can be so like stuffy. Like we're all getting dressed up and we're wearing our little brunch outfits and we're at this winery and like we're doing a boomerang cheers. Like that's a lot of the marketing that you see for the whole wine industry right now, kind of across the board. And it's like, okay, when are we going to get past that? Like, I think everyone knows what going wine tasting has historically looked like, but like the youngest generations that I know that are 21, like they don't really get dressed up and go do stuff like that. Like they're in their jeans and tennis shoes and they want experiences, but not the same ones we're advertising to them.
Yeah, for sure. Do you remember that company, Wink? They were like the, their CMO, Jay Dalwani, very prominent in like the LinkedIn and Twitter e-com marketing space. Recommend following him for anyone. But he worked at Wink, and one thing I think they did really well, if I'm remembering correctly, I don't think they've been active in a year or two or something, but back in their like heyday, they did a really good job in the wine industry. For anyone that isn't familiar, they were like e-com wine, kind of like tailored wine selection subscription service on a weekly basis of like new bottles, interesting flavors and things like that. And they did a great job of kind of breaking that mold early. Maybe they kind of stormed the beach ahead of everything you're doing with your clients, and they kind of cleared the way. But they were doing a great job of having different wines and different like experiential buckets on the consumer side, where it was like, this week I want bottles that are specifically good for having friends from out of town in for a dinner party. Or like, here's the bottle of wine you drink at 2 a.m. Here's the one you have for brunch. This is the one that you can drink in your pajamas with a pint of ice cream or whatever. All these sorts of interesting kind of like situational use cases for it. And yeah, I wish someone would do that again. I don't know. Again, I'm not sure if they are actively doing that anymore.
Yeah,
But yeah, there's a lot of great opportunity for wine, for any sort of stuffy industry to break out of that.
for sure. Yeah. I'll have to look and see what they're doing these days. That's
Yeah.
that's a good example though.
I mean, we're trying to do it. At least I am.
Yeah.
Solo marketing team here. Trying to do that with real estate. I mean, some of the companies you see, they're very down Main Street. If you look on the big competitor, I guess I would say, though I don't think of us particularly as a competitor. I think of us as something totally different. In New York City, the big apartment site is Street Easy, and a lot of their content is very well done, but predictable. It's a lot of beautiful apartment shots and like, historic facades and neighborhood reviews and stuff that you would expect like a, second or third year marketer to think of, or maybe someone from a previous business cycle to think of. And they've been around for about 20 years. So that makes sense. We're trying to kind of take it the other way. I mean, our organic content is all based around like street interviews. Our digital presence is all based around kind of anti-ads, like negative testimonials about our product from humorous sources. Those have, by the way, been like, talk about top performers, really, really good for us. And so we're trying to kind of like bust through that perceived boredom of real estate. I mean, real estate in and of itself makes everybody just kind of like gloss over a little bit, particularly coming out of the COVID market and all the craziness. So we're just trying to be more human about it. Like, this is what we all think about when we think about where we live. Let's openly talk about that.
Yeah. I love that. I'll have to make sure I'm following all of your accounts across platforms because I want to see more of that content. And I think that's the way you have to go because, like I said, marketing for real estate is so difficult, right? Like, you have to get people at the right time. Like, across marketing, that's what we say, right? The right person at the right time. But with real estate, it's really, really important on the timing. Like, you can't market to someone who's not in the market to move. Like, it's just not, you can't convince people to move probably because you had a really good ad, right? Like, you have a big job to do there.
Won't stop me from trying to convince people to move when they don't.
Yeah. Let's just start a movement. Like, everyone just move. Like, it's the year of moving.
Yeah. Break your lease, pack your boxes, find another place.
Yeah. Just do it. Just get out of your apartment and get in a new one.
Yeah. Maybe I won't use that yet as a campaign. In the future, once we max out the entire market and we have a full monopoly on everything, maybe we'll start creating a new one.
Yeah. I love it. Cool. Well, we're coming up on time, but anything else that we didn't discuss yet that we should talk about before we wrap?
Oh man, so much. I could, again, these are topics that, I come from an agency background working in brands, and I used to be able to talk about this stuff ad nauseum every single day.
Yeah.
We could probably do 3 or 4 more hours, and I would not run out of things to hold your audience captive and talk about. But no, that's about it. I think these are the pressing things that are relevant to not just what I'm doing at Realm, which also everyone should go and follow, particularly if you're in New York right now. Check it out. If you're looking to move, use it to find an apartment. If you're not looking to move, you should start looking to move. Use Realm to do it. It's spelled RELM, no A in Realm. An efficient use of letters. But no, there's no other topics I'd like to talk about. Just to implore everyone to go follow us. and critique our marketing as brutally and as honestly as you possibly can in our open public comments section. Makes for interesting dialogue and great for engagement.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, cool. I'll go antagonize you over there. But yes, I'll leave your links in the show notes so people can follow all of your various accounts. But I really enjoyed our chat today. Thank you so much for coming on and talking with me.
Yeah, thanks, Kayla. I appreciate you, giving me a platform from which to just yell about my insane theories of marketing.
It's my favorite thing to do. Just provide the platform and see what comes out of it.
Much appreciated.
All right. Well, have a good one, and I'll talk to you guys later.